哦，
这次采用了人海战术。哎呀！
昨晚北京亦庄的机器人马拉松有多抽象？
Guys, am I just not tech adoption forward or what? But watching robots run a marathon seems like such a waste of time, especially when their top company's robots trips and falls. Meanwhile, workers do the dangerous manual labor that the robots were designed to replace, but now in China, the robots can go out to dance and run. Meanwhile, the workers have to continue the same labor that they were doing before. Meanwhile, China's obsession with electric cars means more combustible products. We call them CCP because they are Chinese combustible products. On April 19th, a series of explosions happened. It's likely an EV explosion that triggered or set off a series of bursts afterwards. And days prior, on April 14th, a fire broke out in a multi-story parking garage at BYD's Pingshan facility in Shenzhen. And the official response stated that there wasn't any casualties, but again, we always question those statements because in China, they really don't want you to know how many people perished. Now, clearly, the batteries are doing well. Not. Whatever the regime decides is the flavor of the month or the year, this year and last year being robots, and the years prior being EVs, economic miracles. The people are expected to celebrate that flavor of the year. And obviously many do, but while the spectacle runs its marathon, something else is happening underneath. The CCP is hiding the reality that China's economy is on a sharp decline trajectory. While we know that since COVID lockdowns ended in 2022, China's economy has never recovered, even as they hide the data, the graphs just don't look good at all. Here's the latest one. In 2021, China's nominal GDP stood at roughly 76 to 78% of America's, and that's actually trying to catch up. But by 2024, by the way, this is all based on their official data, which is always fake. But by 2024, it had fallen to about 64 to 65%. Now, given the actual numbers of American GDP being around 29.2 trillion, China's being $18.9 trillion, the widening of the absolute gap for 3 straight years is still very telling. China's per capita GDP, on the other side, remains below Romania's and Chile's. And with demographics worsening, with the job market, with the real estate slumber, honestly, the odds of overtaking not even the US, but like a country like Poland, this century is near zero. Okay, so we're clearly seeing through even just the official numbers that China's economy is going down, and yet we see somehow China's global perception is rising. How come? Well, for the simple reason that they kicked out Western journalists, so there's literally zero real journalism happening in China. And the big focus of our topic today is how the censorship parallel to the propaganda brainwashing is really delivering a near perfect result in terms of the record of approval within China. Now, this is all based on the fact that they're telling their own people what's going on because there's an information void. We see the obsession, right, with robots with EV production capacity, or even with real economy in terms of the metrics like steel production, cement, energy. But these only reflect China's export and investment heavy model. They don't generate the consumption needed, or even the higher tier of I would say the economy, which is innovation or financial depth that is supposed to be there when you want to sustain long-term leadership in the global market. So building things like ghost cities, apartment buildings, overcapacity without buyers is really, I would just say, not the right way to do this. So today I want to tell you about what's behind those fake data from China. And the core question isn't through analytics, but rather to answer this: are Chinese people truly happy? And if they are happy, are they truly contributing to the forward advancement of Chinese society? Right off the bat, I'll tell you this: they're not happy and they're not contributing. But through censorship, we don't hear the resentments. Through propaganda, they're made to believe that they are happy. And the more so-called advanced robots we see from China, the more bridges and trains we see from China, it makes us think that China is less and less miserable, but in reality, they're really miserable. You might think that we live in the US or other Western nations. We have our problems, huge chain of events happening daily, whether that's affordability, social support, family issues. But let me tell you, our tolerance to pain and misery is quite low in comparison. China's base for tolerance is already quite high, or I should say the starting point of misery is quite high. And so that's completely more than what we can ever experience in a free society. Take the rural area of Yunnan. In this part of China, there's an elderly woman. In her youth, she paid public grain levies, agricultural taxes, helped to build the nation with bridges, repairing roads. She gave her life to the state. And in her old age, she lives in a bare-walled, drafty house. She can't afford clean clothes or clean food. She cannot afford meat. She survives on plain rice porridge and pickled veggies. We're told that there's no homelessness in China. We're told that everybody under the CCP's leadership, the Chinese society is warm, prosperous, harmonious. We're told that there is no crime in China. But the reality is that the CCP systematically dismantled the values and the social fabric that once defined Chinese culture and replaced them with something colder. Now, in this classroom in Zhejiang, a girl, through the security cam, we see that she's suddenly fainting and she fell to the ground. Nearly 20 other classmates witnessed it. Most continued doing whatever they were doing. Nobody helped her. People walked by, and nobody called the teacher. And the fact that the teacher remained completely unaware of this. In today's China, kids are taught none of it is my business. It's not rudeness, it's literally about survival. People are afraid of getting into more trouble by helping. So society has learned indifference. It's a deep, chilling indifference. And this is honestly what I would consider the real China. It's a country that's busier being angry at modern Japan than it is being angry at the lack of support for its own population that has gone morally cold. And so the question is, why don't Chinese people rise up, speak out, or even simply talk about this openly? Well, the thing is, most of the people you go talk to in China, they have no idea that their economy is in a decline. They have no access to information such as so-and-so is living poorly. Because the ones that they get access to, they just simply think it's about internet views. It's about getting traffic. It's not real. Because the government and the state media told me that our country is prosperous. They simply don't know what they don't know. China's censorship apparatus is one of the most sophisticated in the human history, and recently the regime has cracked down even harder on things like VPN, which is actually, the only outlet or the only tool to help them climb the firewall of censorship and so that they can see the outside world. The posts from mainland China, the numbers have gone down so much on sites like X and Instagram. There's fewer of them now because the regime decided that even that was too much. When you control what people see, you control what people do, you control how they feel. And so when the CCP wants people to feel pride, or anger, or loyalty in that particular order, they choose certain ways to do that. And physically, through these mechanical barriers, it's much easier to take place. Take this woman selling street food, for example.
以色列是坏蛋。
以色列，我的妈呀！以色列好像现在谁都不喜欢。
我们国家都恨日本跟以色列，还讨厌美国人、以色列跟日本人。我们国家不喜欢他们。
在美国也有很多人现在不喜欢以色列。
以色列好坏哈，妇女儿童都打。
是的。
我们国家人都善良。
必须得。
我们是大爱的国家。
Now, she's probably never even met an American, never met an Israeli, never had a conversation with someone from those countries she's been taught to resent. Yet she is fully prepared to do this, to hate on them. Not because of experience, not because of learning from personal stories, but because of instructions.
不要忘记日本侵华14年。
不要忘记日本侵华14年，
打倒日本帝国主义！打倒日本帝国主义！打倒日本帝国主义！
但是这家仇国恨，我们能忘吗？不能。
And these kind of videos are everywhere on Chinese social media. Ordinary people overwhelmed with nationalist emotion, performing a grief and rage that was handed to them.
这里是中华人民共和国，只要你。1931年9月18，刽子闯进了江。
And yet, the real misery that's in their lives, the reason why she has to sell street food, or the reason why certain people are in certain ways, they're not allowed to think that it's because of the CCP. And children are taught to hate Japan from a young age. Here's a child hitting a map of Japan repeatedly. This is presented as normal, as patriotic, healthy even. My Hero Academia, for example, a Japanese anime, is banned in China because one of its villains allegedly referenced Unit 731 of the Imperial Japanese Army. The historical atrocities of Japan's invasion deserves to be discussed, but honestly, today the CCP doesn't want discussion that's honest. They want a permanent enemy, right? Communism needs to thrive off of manufacturing two different groups, the oppressed and the oppressor, or in this case, the Japanese and the Chinese, but the class struggle, always somebody to blame. Japan serves its purpose as that, and so does America, but also the rest of the Western world. Don't think that if you live in Europe, you're somehow a friend of China. This is not education, by the way. This is total state control. This is burn of direct angers away from the government towards an outside target. They say the grass is greener on the other side. So is the ability to catch fire for a Chinese nationalist to look forward to. If that makes sense. The real education in this case is being quietly shut down. For example, on April 16th, a content creator who taught high school English and liberal arts announced that due to quote-unquote force majeure, they would no longer be able to teach high school politics on China's version of YouTube, Bilibili. Now, most of the lecture notes have been taken down already, and they're trying to find ways to settle this. So you cannot teach honest history in China. You cannot even teach honest civics. I don't know the answer to that question. I have more examples, though. This one's pretty funny. A man recently attempted to film a local courthouse simply because the building looked grand and imposing. And because of that, a plainclothes police officer came wearing a baseball cap, glasses, and a mask, immediately appeared and asked to check for his ID and camera for sensitive content. Now, the official justification? Well, these protesters might show up, and if you happen to film them and post it on the internet, it might cause misunderstanding. As in, yeah, people like us will think that China, wow, there's so many chaotic events happening around the world. So yeah, misunderstanding is the word they used.
我普通公民，你们是执法人员。我现在不懂法，我想请教一下。就算啊，你们说的那个事儿，我站在这儿了，我拍法院了，说了一些关于案件的问题，我违反的是哪条法律法规？
你听我说，不是说你违反哪条法律法规，是你的视频。如果说，比如说这个事儿，对不对？这个情况，但是你把这视频发上去了，你没说明，因为你不了解这个事情情况。对。如果说一旦产生问题了，怕产生这个误解，那什么？
那是不是得我先剪辑完？
Is it really true that the person filming a building is somehow going to be caught in some sort of a geopolitical or a social warfare online? Probably not. But it's because the regime spends more money and resource on keeping stability than they do on social welfare. And so you can imagine this is how the bizarreness comes in. They spend more money on controlling what people hear and see and do than on helping people achieve a better life. Here's another example I thought was hilarious. A deputy director of China's National Bureau of Statistics recently announced that the average weekly working hours of enterprise employees in the first quarter of 2026 was 48.1 hours. Okay, the comment section was immediately flooded with people tagging and at China's anti-fraud hotline because they think that this person with a 48.1 hour average is lying their butts off. Anybody in China that works 996 knows that that's the reality. White-collar office workers, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, right? Companies, for example, in this case, in a Zhejiang manufacturing company, they circulated a consent form where employees have to sign a declaration stating that they, quote-unquote, voluntarily chose to work 12-hour days through holidays from onboarding until resignation. So they literally are pledging, again, voluntarily, never to seek legal arbitration over their working conditions. Yeah, totally voluntary. Okay, here's the complete picture. We have the CCP who, on the one end of the extreme, puts robots on a marathon running course, while on the other side you have the elderly woman who basically has nothing to her name, no support. So that's the two extremes. Then what about the people in the middle? Well, they find the flavor of the month, whether that's celebrating EV technologies, a new Huawei phone, but when the fire breaks out, when the censorship comes in, whether that's because there's some sort of an event that has to do with hating Japan, all of these things, there is something dictating your future in China as one that is just miserable. You might not have it in the economic sense, you might not have it in the financial suffering, you might not even have it in terms of the growth or for your kids' future, but you will definitely have is you'll have an experience that fundamentally will make you think that this is misery. And so, either you're somebody who's working 996 right now, or you're somebody whose kid is banging away at a map where Japan is. You see where this is the issue, right? The Chinese population, it's not a monolith. They do struggle like us. They feel pain like us. Some of them, many of them are not fooled by the state just like us. So there's always this sort of I guess I would think would be a spectrum of people. And we're not trying to generalize, but we're trying to show examples of what could be. So you've seen a wide range of different Chinese people behaving differently when censorship, when propaganda, when brainwashing is in front of them. Some choose to believe it, others choose not to. But the point is, on the outside, let's not pretend like it's just a fairy tale on the other end of the world. Across the Pacific Ocean. the truth is the censorship wall is still standing, and the regime is working hard to last another day. The question is whether or not the Chinese people are capable of seeing the truth, and when that happens, what sort of a shocking revelation will we have? And the question is always going to be like, every bit of resistance has been shut off and censored. We're waiting for the big one in the future where this terrible explosion of truth of everything comes out. And I think that's when people would see, well, both for us and people inside China, to see the real nature of the CCP. So thank you very much for watching this episode and listening to the topic. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and let me know what you'd like to see or hear about on China in our next episode. And thanks again for watching. We'll see you next time.